Burning blood and flames spread across the earth, the madman wielded his sword and stained human blood, the water demon lurked in the dark corner of the riverbank, drinking his insane life, and the night demon gazed upon the dark sky. This is the luckiest and most unfortunate era. For Taoist beings, they awaken their own Tao lineage, summon powerful creatures from ancient times to fight for them, forge ambitions, achieve hegemony, and even cultivate immortality. But for all sentient beings, with war raging, thousands of miles of bare ground, and lives like grass, who is the hero who saves the world? Heroes Invincible 3, Cultivation mod, Ghost City High Play opened by Demon Blood Thieves. Keywords of the novel. Hero Invincible's Immortal Cultivation mod. No pop-ups. Hero Invincible's Immortal Cultivation mod. Complete collection download. Hero Invincible's Immortal Cultivation mod. Latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. Misalignment of Fate. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Misalignment of Fate. The sky cries with fire, the black clouds dance and fight. Burning blood and flames spread across the earth, the madman wielded his sword and stained his blood. The water demon lurked in the dark corner of the riverbank, and the joyous desire for his mother to drink all her crazy life. The night demon gazed upon the dark sky. This is the luckiest and most unfortunate era. For Taoist beings, they awaken their own Tao lineage, summon powerful creatures from ancient times to fight for them, forge ambitions, achieve hegemony, and even cultivate immortality. But for all sentient beings, with war raging, thousands of miles of bare ground, and lives like grass, who is the hero who saves the world? Here we go. As the dark clouds in the sky gradually dissipated and a red moon emerged, the entire earth seemed to be engulfed in blood and fire. Gao Hao stood on the edge of the cliff, looking nervously at his right hand. A faint dark light and shadow appeared, jumping between his skin and flesh. Demon Blood Thief. After experiencing the extinction of the immortal dynasty in the Rise of the Stars, in the third act, the ancient demon blood fled, shining on the earth through the blood moon, giving all beings who desire power and have qualifications the demonic nature, making them a new kind of Tao. The cant that surged the most in this scene was the demon cult, which had a strong impact on the immortal court and the holy martial palace, which ruled the world in the first two scenes, and even almost overturned the immortal court. Even if ultimately pacified by the Nine-Star Lord led by the Purple Way North Pole Saint, it still caused indelible scars and the world fell apart. As for why Gao Hao knows so clearly, there is no way he can do it. The traditional artistic ability of the traveler has been enhanced. I was originally just playing the Genesis game Immortal Invincible, but I didn't expect to think day and night and travel to this real world one night. Hunger, pain, fear, and death. With the help of Bay's wilderness survival method, Gao Hao lived his life in the wilderness and finally waited for the moment when the curtain opened, hoping to become a Taoist. There is no way, as an invincible veteran player of Immortals, I always understand a truth that if I don't become a Taoist, I will eventually become an ant. In this world, Dao Zhong is a bug-level existence that can not only enhance personal strength, but also be unparalleled in solo combat. It has a divine skill of burning mountains and boiling seas, and more importantly, it can comprehensively increase the damage to faction creatures. With more people attacking fewer people, I can beat my younger brother stronger and weaker, and it is also a strategic move. Generally speaking, becoming a Taoist depends on one's natural talent, whether one has a demonic gene, and whether one has a paranoid mindset. Most of the Taoist priests in the demon cult are unreasonable individuals, named, crazy, hentai, chicken feet of little blood, and so on. But experts like Gao Hao from all camps still know some top-secret methods. Every time a new curtain is opened and the Tao Qi surges, it is most likely that the heavenly descending Tao seed will appear. In fact, in layman's terms, it means the revival of Tao Qi. Even ordinary people have the opportunity to become Dao Zhong, but the probability of demonic blood is the highest. To become a demon believer, one can drink chicken blood, draw a sun and moon array, and silently recite the reputation of the blood ancestor in their hearts, which can increase the probability of becoming a Taoist. Helpless, this is reality. It's okay to steal a chicken carefully. The sun and moon formation can only be imitated haphazardly based on memory, and the blood ancestor's reputation is truly unknown to him. In the past, when watching animations, I used to think that Daozhong had words in his mind. When he used it himself, he could only think of buzzing, but what did he do? Tell me more, otherwise who would know your real name? Due to helplessness, Gao Hao could only contemplate the underworld, which is the ultimate realm of this world and often the birthplace of evil factions. It is highly likely that the demon cult is an extension of the blood river. Fortunately, this hard work was not in vain. At the peak of the blood moon, Gao Hao felt his right back burning like a fire, and a dark image suddenly appeared. Ghost Road Seed. 0 for attack, 0 for defense, 0 for divine soul, and 0 for magic. Gao Hao's skin quickly dried and his flesh withered, transforming from a young man to a dying old man in an instant. But correspondingly, the sound of thunder explodes in my mind, making me feel ethereal and painless. My consciousness seems to have been sublimated to the extreme, and my perception of the world undergoes a mysterious change. What? Watching this strange state, Gao Hao's mind was filled with question marks. How could it be a ghostly Dao seed? Isn't this the Dao seed that will only appear in the next scene of horror revival? According to theory, the most likely ones to be born as blood thieves are demon Ko, Hehuan, and blood worshippers. Gao Hao has already figured out the specific development path of the demon cult, creating a blood pool and teaching principles. The sudden emergence of a ghostly race is not even from this era. Human demons dominate the world, and he wants to cultivate vengeful spirits, zombies, and absolute mutants. If he is reported, he will be punished directly. Fortunately, this scene is a demonic blood thief, and the chaotic world begins. Even if he is a demonic outsider who cultivates corpses, he will not appear too shocking, but he still needs to develop in a lewd manner. Genius. Soul Control. Awakening Corpse Ghosts +1. For all Ghost City troops under the command of the Dao type, attack +2, good guy, it's actually this skill. You should know that the most common skill in the Ghost sect is the Soul Move, also known as the Ghost Disaster. It awakens the souls of the dead from the underworld and relies on a large number of Ghost City soldiers to exchange life for life, fighting more and more. If one's divine power is upgraded to a high-level soul move, they can also use special items to summon once powerful death troops or Taoist beings to participate in battles, which is simply a bug. Although the common weakness of Ghost City forces is their poor 3 surroundings attributes and low abilities, they cannot withstand cheap and unlimited regeneration, so the terrifying revival is truly true. However, when Gao Hao saw this skill, he was not at all disappointed, but rather overjoyed. The world only knows the terror of soul moves, but in reality, soul control is not inferior at all, even surpassing it. As the name suggests, using the soul to control the corpse can enhance the comprehensive ability of Ghost City troops. The seemingly insignificant bonus in the early stage may not even be as good as the personal attribute points of the Taoist. The range of the Soul Lord is based on the Lord's bonus. As the great Lord of the Ghost City of his generation, all Ghost Cities under his command are subject to this bonus without any range restrictions. Moreover, in the mid-term of Soul Palace, it can awaken the special existence of Ghost City, making the troops become wise leaders, which is simply a weakened version of the cultivation tool for Taoist cultivation. It should be noted that the awakening of Dao Zhong is extremely rare. Apart from being blessed by heaven every time the opening ceremony takes place, great opportunities are needed to recruit them. Even seasoned players who have gone through vicissitudes accumulate 1 or 2 Taoist seeds in each scene, and gradually cultivate them to the extreme. If one dies from being surrounded and unable to escape, it would be a devastating blow. The soul control skill perfectly compensates for this weakness, unleashing the maximum power of the underworld disaster and strengthening the strength of the entire camp. In the first scene of horror revival in the game, the ultimate boss was a soul-controlled force, rolling the snowball to the maximum extent and gathering the entire world alliance to be able to withstand annihilation. From now on, anyone who awakens this divine power in the corpse and ghost way will definitely be attacked by a group, taking advantage of their weakness to encircle and kill. Unexpectedly, Gao Hao would now awaken this divine power in the scene of the demon blood thief. Taking advantage of the fact that no one in this world knows about Ghost City and Soul Palace, Gao Hao felt that he could try to survive. As long as he survived these difficult times, he would receive rewards. As for now, the first step in establishing a power is to prepare for the construction of the Ghost City. Is there a better location for the Ghost City than the tomb mound in Luanshigang? He dragged his old body towards the wilderness and glanced at the nearby village. The crimson flames shattered the calm of the night, and cries and shouts drifted in the night sky, creating a strong sense of crisis in his heart. The people of the demon sect are almost all crazy. Compared to them, Gao Hao would rather deal with ghosts. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Tomb Hill. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Tomb Hill. There is a disorderly stone hill near the original village, where anonymous refugees are buried. The bodies of plague or tragic deaths are also thrown here. After years and months, it is unknown how many bones have been buried. Gao Hao climbed to the mountaintop panting heavily, threw a stone down, and it was a long time before an echo could be heard. Although the slope may not be steep, its height and concealment are both very good, and ordinary people would not want to go down to explore. It is suitable for building the first-level building of the Ghost City. Tomb Hill. The grass on the roadside occasionally emits a faint smell of decay, and occasionally glimpses of shiny white bones. In the pitch-black night, it is not a problem for corpse and ghost Dao types. Due to talent bestowed upon them, all troops and Dao types in the Ghost City are not affected by Dark Night, and even after leveling up, there is a Dark Night attribute bonus effect, which is very suitable for night raid battles. Gao Hao raised his arm, and the shadow ghost let out a ferocious roar, as if sensing the strong aura of death around him. The minimalist version of a first-order building is the only barracks that do not require resources to build. It consumes Taoist power, equivalent to carrying a summoning barracks with you. This is also the key reason why Dao Zhong is crucial. As long as Dao Zhong exists, one can build influence anywhere. Of course, the cost is not small. For a level 1 cultivator like Gao Hao, even with all his strength, he can only build a graveyard. The shadow escaped from the arm and descended on the calm field before us. The stones kept shaking, and there seemed to be some monster awakening underground. White bones burst out like spring grass, bone claws and bone arms bloom like summer flowers, forming a tomb mound of tens of square meters. The ghostly aura diffuses, and the dark ghosts manifest in the mist. A pair of eerie blood eyes gaze upon them. Gao Hao looked at him with half a step back, his eyes full of solemnity. In his field of vision, countless vengeful souls drifted towards the grave, with limbs and arms severed, slaughtered by fire and water, and screamed in agony for his life. As countless souls rushed towards him, the imprints on his arms flickered, and the ghost disappeared with a loud bang. Everything came to an abrupt end, and the chaotic stone hill once again fell into tranquility. A ghostly grave stood before my eyes. Tomb Hill. You can recruit white bone soldiers to drive you, white bone soldier. Attack 4, Defense 5, Killing 1.3, Health 6, Speed 4. Recruitment criteria. 60 Spirit Jade per unit. Conversion speed. 6 per week. Stock. 2. Evaluation. Ghost City is the smallest and most powerful existence. No matter who you are, your ultimate destination will be bones. Seeing the familiar yet unfamiliar grave, Gao Hao's heart surged. When it comes to the most powerful unit in Ghost City, it is neither a bloodthirsty zombie, nor a nimble painting, nor an unattainable ghost king. In all battles, survival is the way, and quantity is the hegemony. Of course, in the real world today, if the white-boned soldiers cannot stack in numbers and can only be deployed on a large scale, they currently do not have combat skills to gather their troops and cannot unleash the strongest attacks of the white-boned soldiers. But the cheap and frugal army in the early stages is definitely one of the best openings. Gao Hao took out a jade stone the size of a finger bone from the package and threw it painfully into the grave. The hard currency in the world of immortals is spirit jade, which can not only replenish the Taoist power lost, but also serve as currency for building and recruiting, including ordinary people who also spend spirit jade. During his days of lurking in the village, he had already thought of the opening of the era of demonic blood thieves and had already planned for it. However, as an ordinary person, he didn't want to attract attention and only obtained a meager 200 spirit jade. Recruiting 2 white-boned soldiers would consume half of his wealth, which was really painful. The dense fog in the tomb mound dissipated, and 2 white bones stood up from the chaotic pile of stones. One held a wooden stick, and the other controlled the bone spurs. The hollow eye sockets were filled with a flickering fire, and Yin Qi rushed towards the face. Gao Hao's mind twitched slightly, and 2 white bones sprinted towards a small tree next to him. The wooden stick and white bones were smashed fiercely, breaking the half-human thick trunk. And the bone spurs accurately pierce a hole through the white bone, penetrating thoroughly. Upon seeing this scene, Gao Hao's eyes lit up and he was lucky enough to attract a white-boned soldier with full killing power. Under normal circumstances, a white-boned soldier's strength slightly surpasses that of an ordinary adult. Considering its unclear state of importance, it is not a problem to hit 3.4 people. But if there is a Dao Seed attribute bonus, it is completely different, even if 2 white-boned soldiers slaughter a small village without any problem. However, Gao Hao looked at his attributes of 0 attack and 0 defense, with black lines all over his head. Such a low attribute template is really the only one he has seen in his life. Is this the tragedy of the wrong era? It's okay, as long as I become a Taoist, there is hope for a comeback. I will slowly stay in the original village, hoarding food and soldiers. One day, it will be my dark sky era. Just as Gao Hao was fantasizing about the development of a ghost city in his spring and autumn dreams, low and suppressed conversation drifted in the wind. Puff. Just throw the body down, no one will go down to inspect the chaotic rocks in the village. You can say he went out to do business and hasn't returned for a long time. After about a week, he said he went missing. Tonight is really strange, with frequent anomalies. If it weren't for I wouldn't have come either. The male voice spoke with a hint of fear, but with a hint of malice. A woman hummed softly, as light as a thread. The sound of footsteps mixed with strange tugs. Are you crazy? In this place, hurry back and close the door. The village is already in chaos. Your husband is missing, and you, a weak woman, should act panicked. I didn't finish speaking, my mouth seemed to be blocked by something. Gao Hao caught a glimpse of a faint flicker of fire not far away, a man and a woman entangled in disheveled clothes. Good guy, the free performance at Luanshigang is right. The woman's appearance is not very clear, with long hair cascading, but her figure is very plump. She is wearing white clothes and can vaguely see her slender legs through the cloth shirt. Vision benefits from Divine Souls +2, half pressed against the man's chest, like an 8-clawed spider, the strong man struggled with his hands and feet under his body. He. The woman laughed nervously, gentle yet full of madness. How do you think he came back? With his usual weakness like a useless person, he braved it today. Sneaking behind the door and peeping, I deliberately turned my back on him. That angry look is really joyful. You said today is not a good day. Wrong. What a wonderful blood moon, what a joyful experience, and the delicious smell of blood, it's simply a holy land. The woman became more and more excited as she spoke, dancing and dancing, while the strong man beneath him gradually became motionless, limping on the grass, and even his breathing disappeared. She gently lifted her body, and the strong man's face had already blurred, as if he had been crushed by some sharp weapon. His essence and blood had been depleted, leaving only pale and rotten flesh. The woman was proud, revealing her green face in the firelight, with blood constantly moving like earthworms, enchanting and terrifying. Just as she was about to leave, 4 figures walked in the shadows. Huan Daozhong. No, it seems to be just a hybrid influenced by magic blood. Gao Hao walked out of the shadow and looked at the crazy woman in front of him, covered in blood. 2 white-boned soldiers flanked her to prevent her from escaping. I'll give you a chance to test the strength of the white-boned soldier. The woman was visibly panicked when she saw the white skeleton moving. However, when he saw Gao Hao's decaying body, he struggled for a while before revealing a seductive aura. Shoulders lightly lifted, the already messy white shirt could hardly hide, and the woman's fair skin showed a hint of tender red, with a peach powder aroma emanating from the surroundings. Grandpa must be very lonely coming to Luanshigang so late. Follow your sister, I can give you endless happiness. Her gaze was like a hook, pulling away the man's soul. Not to mention ordinary men, even exotic males may not be able to control them. Unfortunately, he is facing a ghostly Taoist with a divine soul of 2. Enchanted fragrance, determined that the divine soul can be exempted. And, the creatures of the ghost city. Underworld creatures are not affected by mental powers. Gao Hao clapped his hands, but with a hint of anger, he said. Your grandfather's. You know a little about dressing, but I don't want to become it. After the shadow, a corpse emerged, with a pale face and pale eyes, seemingly suffocated to death. But when it faced the coquettish woman, it suddenly pounced, full of evil energy. Until then, the woman's expression changed greatly, revealing incredible terror. Gao Hao took some time to use Soul Palace on the corpses rolling halfway up the slope. These crazy people with demonic blood create infinite chaos, but they must have a heart of awe towards death. The enemy's terror is like the fighter planes of ghosts and corpses. Taking advantage of the panic of the demon blood devourer, the wooden stick white-boned soldier fiercely smashed her head. At the moment of contact, the opponent's neck and face seemed to be in full bloom like cherry blossoms, and their pink skin was as hard as a stone, unexpectedly bouncing the white-boned soldier's attack away. But another bone spur followed, piercing through her abdomen fiercely, causing a painful scream. Although Daozhong can digitize the types of troops, in actual combat, it is no longer possible to deduct all health and die as before. Attacks on certain key points can also increase their damage. Moreover, Gao Hao felt that the data-driven form was only the state in his mind, and was it the same for other types of Taoism? Not necessarily. 2 white-boned soldiers took turns serving her, and in the end, the soul guardian ghost spread its teeth and claws on her, firmly holding her down, tearing open her throat, and biting her face. Fresh blood splattered all over the ground, and the green grass withered at the moment of touch. Sure enough, he was infected with some magic blood, but the dosage was not enough to awaken as a Taoist seed, so he became a madman dominated by desire. It's not that the female demon is incompetent, but rather that the white-boned soldier plus 2 attacks have a critical increase in output in the early stages, directly increasing their attack by January 3rd, which can cause a lot of damage. If the soul control bonus is removed, even if the white-boned soldier can break through the defense against female demons, the opponent can rely on the pain immunity added by magic blood to counterattack. With the defense of white-boned soldier 5, the battle will not be so easy. The female demon's entire head was torn off in half, while her shrugged eyes stared at the scattered blood, gradually revealing a crazy expression. Gao Hao suddenly felt something was amiss and ordered the white-boned soldiers to quickly retreat. Boom! The pink mist was like gas, exploding instantly, leaving the entangled spirits dead without any corpses, creating a large pit of about 2 meters. The big stick white-boned soldier retreated slightly slower, with one arm blown up and in a very miserable state. Although there was some damage, it was still a brilliant victory. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. 3 Demons Taking Blood. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. 3 Demons Taking Blood. Reward: Divine Soul Perception. Acquisition: 500 Spirit Jade. Joyous Acacia Powder. 2 Gao Hao scattered the soil on his body and headed towards the big pit. A violent explosion threw out the spirit jade carried by the dead, and he collected it. 500 Lingyu. It seems that these dog men and women are quite fat. Indeed, if you want to raise soldiers, you have to rely on war to raise them. If it weren't for this witch going crazy and having a crazy idea of finding someone to cause trouble at Shigang, Gao Hao might have let them go. The opening of the demon blood thief will surely be heavily suppressed by the immortal dynasty in the Holy Martial Palace, sweeping away all heretics. The demon cult is naturally not a vegetarian, with numerous high-level secret realms emerging. Moreover, this is the era of the demon cult's destiny, and it is naturally blessed. 2 dogs biting each other. Gao Hao just wants to develop peacefully. Ghost City units have a natural talent for night combat, but are extremely weakened during the day. Lower-level units even lose 80% of their strength under the sun, making them extremely weak. This issue has not been resolved even until the terrorist recovery, and it will only be resolved in the next scene when new forces emerge and seek the shadow canopy. If someone is killed by a female demon at a mass grave and catches attention, it will really start to collapse. Under the darkness of the night, the huge pit condensed a pink aroma. Gao Hao absorbed it with his divine soul and carefully wrapped it with Dao Qi, his face gradually becoming more solemn. He had thought about the opening ceremony where the demonic blood was raging and the hidden dragon was in the abyss. However, those who could gather the powder of Huaxiang on the first day definitely had a natural talent for cultivation. The talent of the female demon in front of her is not worthy of lifting her shoes, but since it's not her, who is it? Where did the acacia powder on her body come from? After a brief moment of contemplation, the appearance of the female demon on Wanshi indicates that there must be a source of pollution nearby. Perhaps not far from here, someone has already awakened to the Tao seed, which is why there is such a widespread impact. In the early stages of the establishment of the demon cult, the vast majority were violent repression, which would attract the attention of the Holy Martial Palace and the Immortal Court. For a moment, Gao Hao wanted to stay away from this troublemaker, but he quickly extinguished this unrealistic idea. Do not establish influence and fight alone. Don't be fooled. From the moment of awakening, the innate memory has taught Dao Zhong the importance of campsites. Moreover, promoting oneself as a Taoist requires a large amount of resources, and without subordinates working, there is no need to think too much. Gao Hao sat on the edge of the grave, breathing in the ghostly haze, looking up at the red moon, lost in thought. Since we all need to develop, we cannot be soft on the lunatics of the demonic cult. To avoid initial attention, it is necessary to ensure peace in the territory. After enduring this stage, the situation in various regions will deteriorate in the middle of the demon blood period, and the immortal dynasty will not be able to suppress it everywhere. As the initial territory of Yuansuan, it seems that he wants to become a qualified ghost security officer once. The biggest problem is his current state, which is not suitable for meeting people. Not to mention his extremely weak physical strength, he cannot escape when encountering strong enemies. Even this skinny appearance can scare the villagers. We need to develop an agent to help him handle affairs. The offspring of the demon cult are familiar with this matter. Both the Demon Ko and the Hehuan Daozhong are extremely skilled in this art, and their innate powers, such as the thief's eye and the charm, have their own uses. After much thought, I can only blame myself for not awakening with demonic blood. Gao Hao shook his head, as those who were at the forefront of immortal invincibility, he never complained about the version. The agent must find one, even if it costs money. The next step in the development of the camp is to establish a ghost temple, which requires a large amount of resources. Ghost Temple allows you to build ghost city buildings and extract spirit jade from corpse bones. Requirements: 5,000 spirit jade, 20 spirit wood, 20 pyroxene except for lingmu, and pyroxene are definitely considered hard currency in resource minerals. If you want to build a military camp related to Taoism, you must rely on these two minerals. Fortunately, there are still quite a few of them on land, they just need to be mined by hand. Since it is a mineral, there is a distinction between abundant and barren resources. There are a few spiritual trees rustling around Luanchagang, but there is hardly any pyroxene. As the name suggests, only useless stones remain in this area, which are used to pile up bones. This problem is not difficult to solve. As long as there is lingyu, one can exchange for pyroxene in the village market. Although the quantity and cost-effectiveness are low, what kind of bicycles are needed at this stage? The key is still money. Without money to start the game, it's difficult to move forward. I suggest reopening. What? It can't be reopened, it can only be cultivated and developed. Gao Hao did not rashly return to the village and experienced the awakening of demonic blood. Currently, it is absolutely chaotic. Even if he is accompanied by 2 white bone soldiers, if surrounded by dozens of people, he will definitely have a barbecue set meal. Instead, it is better to focus on hoarding soldiers. So for the next week, I slept during the day and went out at night with my white bone soldiers to chop wood, restoring the lost Tao energy along the way. In order to strengthen the speed of logging, he did not act as a supervisor. He directly graduated from a civil engineering university and personally started to obtain 1 move/day of resources. As for the chaos in the past few days, many corpses have been thrown into pits, becoming nourishment for the graves. However, many of them came in vain, carrying burlap bags and throwing them away. Even if Gao Hao sensed it, he had no chance to do anything. Jumping out during the day, the first-level white bone soldier will definitely be brushed off as an experienced baby. After brushing 7 pieces of wood like this, Gao Hao summoned 6 white bone soldiers again on the grave, with only one carrying a bone shield and a killing power of 2. The rest were all scum with a killing power of 1, which made him feel heartbroken. This is almost all his wealth. He summoned so many crooked melons and cracked dates, or else he spent his spiritual jade. Gao Hao would definitely unscrew his skull and use it as a night pot. However, luck is always conserved. When he pounded his chest and feet, his divine soul moved slightly and he noticed a stranger approaching the Wancher gang. Although his footsteps were light, the breath of a living person could not hide it from him. For strong men, carrying a corpse, tiptoed and observed at any time. When he threw the body into the deep pit, he didn't leave quickly. Instead, there was an internal conflict, and 3 of them formed a faint circle, trapping a young man in the middle and drawing a short knife. Gao Hao used up to 2 divine souls to eavesdrop on the wind and listen to the beginning. It was probably a gang taking orders and searching for the lost young master. The young master was lured away by a woman and disappeared for about a week. They couldn't find anyone, so they wanted to impersonate and find a resentful person to replace them. But the big boss disagrees and wants to kill them all. And this kid is a newcomer to the gang, who happens to be the woman's younger uncle. He was originally trying to protect him. Unable to find his brother and sister. Law, I had no choice but to abandon him. Listening, Gao Hao suddenly felt a coincidence. Why is the plot so familiar? In the midst of speaking the truth, the person behind him secretly began to take action, but the boy seemed not unprepared. In a hurry, he drew a knife from under his waist, dodged the attack with his agile body movements, and slashed one person, relying on him as a shield. As he was about to stabilize, his feet suddenly softened. The person who was subdued threw him in the opposite direction, and the blade hit him hard, causing his head to break and blood to flow. He looked shocked, but caught a glimpse of the confident smirks of his 3 companions, and suddenly understood something. Are you really a young boy? The road to the martial arts world is still far away. Let's understand in the next life. After speaking, he raised his steel knife and was about to stab the boy in the throat. But in an instant, strange movements rang out in the darkness, and 3 skeletons rushed towards them with lightning speed. 3 bone spurs, like ice knives, fiercely pierced into the chest of the 3 people, spraying blood. Soul control. Dominate the attack power of the white bone soldier by 2, and then use the knight to sneak attack when they are satisfied, which is indeed a deadly move for ordinary people. Gao Hao walked out of the darkness, illuminated by the white bone soldiers and residual torches, like a dark night demon king. You. Before the words could be spoken, the injured boy seemed to have seen some terrifying scene and threw out a pink handkerchief. Embroidered weaving, a butterfly dances gracefully, as if in a dream. Although it is light and unparalleled, it comes by the wind, emitting a faint fragrance that lingers in one's dreams. As soon as Gao Hao saw the handkerchief, his warm face suddenly changed. He quickly turned around and lay down on the ground, with 3 skeletons advancing together. In an instant, there was another violent explosion, with powder overflowing, turning this nameless and boneless place into a blooming flower on the other side. Enchanted fragrance, determine that the divine soul can be exempted. Enchanted fragrance, determine that the divine soul can be exempted. The mind keeps reminding, but it cannot stop the black shadow from moving forward. Gao Hao walked up to the boy and gave him 2 big-eared photons to wake him up from his coma. "What's your name?" asked fiercely speaking. He picked up the broken bone spurs and swayed in the air. Li Bin. Even though this person is mentally resilient and has such deadly means in his hands, he can't help but tremble his teeth as he watches his bones revive and evil spirits interrogate him. The bone spurs pierced downwards, hunting in the wind, and the imagined scene of red and white splashing did not occur. The soil replaced his head, only a centimeter away. "Get out of here. Follow me. Remember, you owe me 180 pyroxenes. When will you pay off and when will you leave?" The remaining white bone soldiers surrounded Li Bin, lifted him up, and headed towards the grave post. Turning around, Gao Hao didn't grit his teeth so hard, but instead showed a shocking expression. Li Bin, the first happy slave of Yuanling, weaves a handkerchief for Huanmeng's free hometown and is plagued by endless demonic blood polluters. A name may have duplicate names, and a story may happen coincidentally, but when all the coincidences come together, it is no longer a coincidence. 3 demons steal blood, Dream Road Tomb. The famous Hehuan fairy in this scene, the versatile and pure demon blood cultivator who wants to climb the peak, Dream Xuanji, and the capable General Li Bin she has taken in, are actually in the original village. Interesting. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Future Investment. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Future Investment, Lingyu plus 150, White Bone Soldier. Point 3, 3 gang members, with so much fuel and water, can't even make up for the losses. Especially Li Bin, this kid, has a remarkable ability to cause trouble. If he hadn't revealed his name at the last moment, he would definitely have been sent to the underworld today. In the invincible world of immortals, the Tao seed is the most powerful weapon of war, but talent is very important and unreachable for billions of sentient beings. If there is a difference between talent and destiny, one can only obtain some Taoist power, and it is not without a bright future. For example, for different types of forces, although they can only be cultivated through barracks and buildings, what is the foundation? Most of them are still living beings. Including wild monsters, ravaged by Tao Qi, tormented and driven insane, resulting in a loss of spiritual transformation. The first level unit of the demon cult is the Mad Slayer, but the joyful Tao unit has a natural talent called the Confused Slave, which can add rank after the Mad Slayer unit. It can continuously upgrade to lead units of different levels, and comes with a command bonus of 3 enclosures. To put it bluntly, its effect is somewhat similar to Soul Palace. However, the Confused Slave is a branch of the Hehuan Tao, possessing spiritual intelligence and the ability to independently control a certain Tao soldier. There are also drawbacks, such as limited peripheral health benefits. If one stays away from the acacia tree for too long, it is easy to go crazy. That's the same truth. In the world where immortals are invincible, power is ultimately the king. Before the soul palace emerges, the confused slave is the strongest ruler. Li Bin was under the control of Meng Xuanji, leading a single army with almost no defeats, and even achieved brilliant results in killing Daozhong. At first, Gao Hao did not associate Huan Fan with Meng Xuanji because they first appeared in the Abyssal Mausoleum, which was already in the middle stage of demonic blood. They had 5 buildings that could produce Huan Desire Maidens, which was the time when their divine power was unleashed. It is impossible to connect it with the desolate original village. But upon careful consideration, this is only the first week of the opening ceremony, and the once dominant figures are still joining gangs. The 3 demons striving for blood was the beginning of the legend of Dream Xuanji. At the beginning, before she was promoted to a Taoist level, she fought against 2 other highly talented quasi-Taoist levels and seized the legendary treasure, the bottle of demon blood. From then on, she was unstoppable. But there are different opinions on the specific details of the plot. Some talk about Meng Xuanji's clever battle against 2 demons to win, while others say she brought in the immortal dynasty to kill with a borrowed sword. There are also rumors that Meng Xuanji is unparalleled in charm and has taken the 2 quasi-Taoist seeds as his subordinates. Gao Hao doesn't care about these gossip rumors. The key information he has confirmed so far is: 1. There are 3 dangerous demon cubs coming to Yuansuan to cause trouble. 2. The other party is about to take action, at least Meng Xuanji has reached out to this place. He pondered for a moment and turned his head to look at the prisoner who was losing money. Li Bin was tied to the spiritual wood next to the grave, constantly guarded by 2 white-boned soldiers. He occasionally glanced at this side, and his expression had calmed down. Undoubtedly the number 1 slave of the future, at least with excellent psychological qualities. Gao Hao walked up to him and asked, "I'll ask you, you answer. Don't lie, I have a way to perceive, if I detect it, I'll die." Li Bin glanced at the white-boned soldiers on both sides and immediately believed in the miracle of the deceased's resurrection. "Where did you get that pink handkerchief? Do you know its purpose?" "Qingfeng Tower is a place with a fence, and one of the girls gave it to me as a gift, saying that she could save her life in times of crisis. I didn't believe it at first, but I felt grateful for the other party's love for wearing it on me. At the moment of crisis, I instinctively took it out, and I never expected it to have such power." "What is the current situation in the original village?" "It's very unfortunate. Since that abnormal day, the 9 Wilderness City Immortal Court has shrunk its strength, and remote places like Yuansuan have been almost forgotten. Strange howls often come from the village at night, and many honest families are slaughtered, leaving the ground covered in flesh and blood the next day. Once, I witnessed a flesh and blood monster with a lump all over its head. It moved quickly and had great strength, holding a butcher's knife in its hand and killing anyone it saw. Killed only after being surrounded by more than 10 people using weapons." After speaking, Li Bin also glanced at the white-boned soldier, as if comparing which monster was more terrifying. Gao Hao nodded, but in fact it was because this place was poor and remote. After all, extraordinary power had already appeared in this world. For the Immortal Dynasty and the Holy Martial Palace, they usually look like human beings, but it does not mean that some neutral forces are all human beings. If there were immortal Dao soldiers stationed, I wouldn't be too surprised. "Is there a place in the original village that sells spiritual wood and pyroxene?" "Yes, there are those available for sale in the market, especially in the past few days of chaos. As long as you have money, you can pick up the goods, and there is a shortage of spiritual wood resources. The jade wood ratio is 1500.1, and the jade stone ratio is 1000.1. It is estimated that the price of spiritual wood will also increase." Gao Hao anticipated this situation. Spirit wood and pyroxene are not only basic resources for building barracks, but also weapons and armor that can be used by ordinary people or units to equip. With a slight level of forging, spirit wood can be turned into swords and spears, which is very useful for combating madmen affected by magic blood. He doesn't have much spiritual jade in his hands, but it's not difficult to obtain spiritual wood. With the addition of white bone soldiers, he can obtain 2 wood per day. According to his estimation, there can be 30 wood resources around the entire Wanshur gang, and after harvesting, he needs to explore further places. To build the ghost temple, there are quite a few resources that are lacking. Gao Hao glanced at Li Bin and suddenly pinched his hand around his neck, causing a ghostly figure to jump into his body. Li Bin felt severe pain, but could not break free from the rope, and it took a long time for him to improve. I have cursed you with a ghostly corpse, and you will come to solve it in half a month, otherwise you will turn into white bones. Gao Hao pointed to the naked white bone soldier beside him and continued, don't feel aggrieved. Your pink handkerchief has caused great damage, and not killing you is already good. Now I have spiritual wood in my hand, and I need you to go to the market to contact and trade in exchange for pyroxene and spiritual jade. As long as you collect enough 20 pyroxenes and 3,000 spiritual jade, I will lift the curse for you. Gao Hao untied Li Bin's rope and showed him the stored spiritual wood, making him understand his own strength. Of course, since you work for me, you can be considered my agent. I will help you solve some troubles, such as those scheming guys just now. As long as you find a way to trick them into coming to Wanshur gang, I will take action to solve it. But we cannot reveal the secrets of this place, otherwise the curse will take effect immediately. As soon as these words were spoken, Li Bin was clearly moved, and his situation was now very awkward. Although there is no explicit statement within the gang, the actions of the 3 members must have been tacitly approved by the middle level. Even if he escapes today, he cannot go back unless someone can protect him. Seeing him wavering, Gao Hao added a strong dose and said, your brother was actually killed by that adulterer and prostitute. The other party actually wants to buy and kill you. Don't you want revenge for being so bullied? That day, as the details slowly unfolded, Li Bin brought the scattered fragments of his clothes, and his anger surged. Bitch! Thieves, how dare they, how dare they! The white bone soldier used bone spurs to hold the excited Li Bin and pressed him to the ground. Help me, you have a chance to gain extraordinary power and a chance for revenge. Refuse, there's a dead end. How to choose? Li Bin's eyes were bloodshot, and he looked up angrily, confronting Gao Hao without any hesitation in his eyes. I can help you get the pyroxene and spirit jade, but you must help me seek revenge. Kill all the bastards of the Wang family. Gao Hao smiled and patted the other person's shoulder with his withered arm. Deal. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Neutral Wild Monsters. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Neutral Wild Monsters. Li Bin returned to his original village after dawn and went to the market to finalize the buyer. To show his sincerity, he specially transported a cart of lingmu, about 1/10 of the wood. Don't be fooled by the fact that the basic unit required to build the ghost temple is 1 wood and 1 stone, this measurement is actually very large. Ordinary people can make weapons and equipment, and a cart of spirit wood is enough to provide 3 people's weight. Recently, there has been unrest in various places, and if you want to go out and chop wood, you need to have some strength to face monsters in the wild. That's right, forests near Lingmu usually have Taoist beasts that ordinary people find difficult to deal with. That is to say, the surrounding area of Wanshur gang is too desolate, and coupled with the sensitive spirit of Gao Hao, he quickly perceives danger. Even if there are attacks from alienated beasts during logging, he can respond in a timely manner and resist. There are 2 main types of Dao Hua wild monsters near the original village. One is a burrow beast, with a huge head that almost occupies half of its body. However, its eyes have degenerated to only the size of soybeans, with 2 tentacles on its head, short hands and feet, and is about the height of a human child aged 6 or 7. Dungeon Beast. Attack 2, Defense 3, Killing 1, Health 2, Speed 2. The second is the Phantom, which is rare in number and usually appears as a black shadow concentrated in the dark. Once preyed upon, it will attach itself to the shadow of living beings, gradually affecting from body to mind, and ultimately completely eroding. Phantom. Attack 1, Defense 1, Killing 1, Health 1, Speed 0. Binding Shadow. Adhering to the shadow of a living creature, continuously consuming its vitality in divine soul. These two types of wild monsters are both neutral creatures. Compared to reckless and direct burrowing beasts, the phantom is a more difficult thing to deal with, often requiring a special environment to completely eliminate, and it is not easy to detect. Kang. A fierce impact exposed the elusive shadow completely to the sunlight, like leather on fire, with thick and pungent smoke. Green smoke drifted out, accompanied by a faint scream, and the elongated shadow returned to normal. Gao Hao basked in the sunlight, staring at his dry skin and bones, his blue veins lying like earthworms, and everyone he saw was horrified. This ghostly appearance is not an exaggeration to say that one is 100 years old. But there is one biggest benefit to being a zombie and ghost type, including being a ghost city unit that has a great immunity to mental powers. The deeply hidden phantom, even attached to Gao Hao's shadow, is difficult to shake the soul and is quickly detected. It can be easily solved by sunbathing like this. However, ghosts under the sun are also uncomfortable. Gao Hao frowned and withdrew his body under the shade of the tree. The advantages and disadvantages of the ghost road race were both obvious. In his current state, to restore his normal appearance, he needed to reach the level 30 threshold. Of course, it can also be ghostly, completely abandoning the physical body and prioritizing the divine soul, and even able to transfer the soul. In this way, it greatly saves physical damage, and it is really difficult to eliminate without special powers. However, Gao Hao was not prepared to do so. Once his body became ghostly, it would be extremely difficult to reverse it. His skin was like clothing, and stale dead flesh would stink if left unchanged for a week. The most important thing is that while saving physical damage, it will also weaken his own growth in this area. He does not want to become a pure Taoist. While contemplating, a few people walked up the mountain path in the distance. As they approached, they realized it was Li Bin with a dozen strong men pushing a car filled with stones towards this place. Gao Hao's spirit was quite strong, and he could naturally sense what was loaded in the car. However, after a while, the other party gained something. Li Bin held back the others and pushed the cart up the mountain alone. He saw the black robe standing still under the shade of the tree and glanced at the shady forest, where the cold wind occasionally blew. I don't know if it's too tiring or something, sweat keeps flowing from his head. Gao Hao was wrapped in a black robe, and even in the daytime, it was difficult to see his appearance, except for a pair of bright eyes outside. Li Bin has witnessed it before and never wants to see that terrifying scene again. Well done, I didn't expect you to find the channel so quickly. I used to have some connections in the market, but unfortunately, due to the scarcity of wood weapons recently, the price of spiritual wood has risen, so the business negotiations have been very smooth. I contacted several merchants and selected reliable individuals to make an agreement to continue trading. Although the total amount was not told, the other party was willing to do more for the better. The transaction is not a simple barter, especially when it comes to strategic materials such as spirit wood. Li Bin must have cooperated with the market merchants very early and had a better understanding of the situation in order to control it. No wonder he didn't have too much anxiety after accepting this task. Gao Hao nodded, ignoring the process and only looking at the result. As long as one can do good deeds without delaying the construction of the ghost temple, it is considered meritorious. Is there any little troublemaker bothering you? There are followers of the Earth Cave sect, but I was prepared to use the lingyu you gave me to hire some thugs. In addition, through the merchant Mr. Mu, I handed the small leader some items to temporarily stabilize him and complete the transaction before proceeding. Li Bin, on the other hand, was concerned about the overall situation. Gao Hao and the white-boned soldiers were weakened in the daytime and could not protect them. And now that income cannot make ends meet, if one blindly explodes, they will soon fall into a state of financial tension. Nowadays, it is even more of an era of demonic blood, and we cannot make a big fuss about it. Therefore, the Ghost Hall is a building that must be built first, with the highest priority. Is Mr. Mu reliable? Various places are chaotic, and the immortal dynasty is not heard of it. The people have a great demand for spiritual wood for self-protection. Mu Zhen was once a reseller of goods, but he has some connections with the immortal dynasty behind his back, but he is still quite trustworthy. The local snake is indeed different. Although Li Bin is just a small figure in the gang, he also has his own information channels. If Gao Hao were to come by himself, he would probably be like a headless fly. Gao Hao looked at the subordinates brought by Li Bin again, who were also looking at this place, appearing somewhat restrained. It was obvious that as locals, they knew what Luanshigang was all about. Gao Hao waved his hand, and the soil was suddenly spread open. White Bone Claw held a simple wooden box and slowly opened it. The smell of blood suddenly spread, and dozens of beads the size of soybeans squeezed together, becoming somewhat sticky. The eyeballs of cave beasts are materials that can be exchanged for spirit jade, you can take them and deal with them. There is also a phantom skin below, intact and should be able to sell for a good price. Upon careful examination, Li Bin discovered a thin layer of jelly-like mucosa at the bottom of the wooden box, resembling a dead shadow. He took the wooden box with both hands and nodded solemnly. Both are monsters from the disaster-stricken village, but cave beasts are not very strong in terms of resistance and are skilled at digging holes to escape. The phantom is a presence that makes children cry, and ordinary people are eroded with little chance of survival. He went back to trade this time, bringing back resources and Lingyu, almost claiming to have defected to a certain big shot. If this wooden box is brought back again, the deterrent power will be enhanced. Li Bin bowed and was about to turn around and leave, but Gao Hao suddenly grabbed him and whispered to him. Even in the dense forest, he couldn't hear anything to explain. Quickly, Li Bin hurriedly left and filled the wooden cart before leaving, transporting the spiritual wood out. It seems that the wooden box was also revealed, causing everyone to exclaim in surprise. Gao Hao stood in the forest and gazed from afar, his expression calm as water. He looked up at the sun in the sky, only then did he slightly shake. The daytime is running out of time. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Tender Meat. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Tender Meat. The next week may seem calm, but in reality, there will be a surge of undercurrents. White Bone Soldier +6, with a total of 11, possessing 3 white bone soldiers with 3 damage and wielding special bone weapons. Li Bin continued to transport Lingmu for exchange, and the initial process went very smoothly. After clearing the inventory, he obtained 10 copies of pyroxene and 2,000 lingshur. Lingmu has also accumulated up to 10 pieces, and according to mountain and forest exploration, about 15 pieces can still be dug. However, the difficulty of logging and exploration gradually increases, and more neutral Daohua wild monsters interfere. After all, spiritual wood resources are one of the foundations for the cultivation of Dao Qi. Cutting them down completely will damage the environment, so there will naturally be neutral wild monsters to find fault with. If we can find a large timber yard with a renewable spiritual wood cycle, there is no need to be so urgent. Even so, half of the requirements for the ghost temple are still vacant. Slowly, in another week, we should be able to secure resources and build a conference hall. The ghost city forces require a vast amount of basic wood and stone resources, but through the initial stages, whether upgrading or building pre-existing buildings, they do not require rare minerals. That is to say, as long as 1 wooden yard and 1 stone mine are occupied, they can fully support the initial consumption. Relatively speaking, the consumption of the first-level military barracks, slaughterhouses, and conference halls of the demon cult is very small. If there were already some Taoist sects with certain powers, they would probably have started building barracks quickly at this moment, waiting for an opportunity to spread. That's also why the situation of the demon blood thief in this scene is deteriorating so quickly that no one can stop it from blooming everywhere. But there are advantages and disadvantages. After the third level barracks, the demon cult needs a large amount of rare resource, magic earth, to build buildings and explosive weapons, which can be considered a bottleneck period. There is no distinction between the strength of the four rare resources, and it mainly depends on the faction. Forces like the demon cult can almost grasp their lifeline as long as they control the demon earth. But in the early stages of the awakening of demonic blood, the demonic cult did have a great advantage, so Gao Hao felt a great sense of urgency when facing three possible demonic blood cultivators. If the other party develops into a lewd state and builds a slaughterhouse explosive weapon, it would be troublesome. The sun seems to have set quite early today, and soon the sky will darken. The familiar convoy walking from the mountain path was the man transporting pyroxene, but there were only a few people, it seemed like 2 or 3. Gao Hao squinted his eyes slightly and looked towards the leader of the team. Although it was getting late, it did not affect his observation. It is indeed Li Bin's clothes, and he is about the same height, but it is not himself anymore. A dull sound came from the soil behind, and several pale bones had already stood up, staring silently at the mountain path. Luanshigang belongs to hilly terrain, and within the range of grasslands, it is not considered an advantageous terrain for the Ghost City forces. Instead, it is beneficial for the immortal dynasty and holy martial palace of the human race. However, is the opponent still considered a human race? The convoy got closer and closer, and the puppet, resembling a human figure, suddenly broke free. A bright red terrifying tumor squeezed out of its clothes, like a toy that was casually arranged and barely pieced together. It was as strong as a yak and rushed forward. Mad slaughter. Attack 3, Defense 5, Killing 1.4, Health 6, Speed 2. Comment. Others laugh at me for being too crazy, while I laugh at others for not having tender flesh. It is indeed these group of demon cubs. The massive body running at the front ran over the fragile small tree, rusty iron knives slashed down horizontally, but did not hit any target. On the contrary, 3 white bone soldiers worked together to strike and split the mad slaughter into 4 and 5 pieces. Blood and flesh were like rags, and intestines flowed all over the ground. The entire head was nailed to a stone with bone spurs, emitting terrifying screams. The tragic sound left the 2 crazy butchers behind stunned for a moment, and then the pair of things that could still be called eyes gradually turned red, emitting a low roar and charging forward. On its way forward, 2 white bones suddenly fell from the branch and fiercely smashed towards the mad slayer. The bones that were not strong enough were obviously not as sharp as the first wave of attack, but they also slowed down the opponent's attack. Then, 2 white bone soldiers rushed out and arched left and right to teach him how to be a good person. After dealing with 2 bloated monsters, the last crazy slayer was slowly controlled. After all, facing double-digit white bone soldiers, it had already reached the level of a group, and the strength gap was still quite large. The king of the first-tier units of the white bone soldier is not based on boasting, but on actual combat achievements. Crazy 2 is already considered a very high presence in terms of both its 3-dimensional attributes and life, but it is not enough to look at in front of white bone soldiers. Even if challenged in 3v3, the opponent is not an opponent, but now the damage is slightly lower. Glorious victory. Amidst the raging flames of war and the scattered smoke and dust, after a difficult battle, your control over Taoism has been further enhanced after a moment of confusion. Attack power +1, comprehend a new divine power. The way of the earth. The way of the earth. One of the 4 attributes of the world, penetrating the veins of the earth and comprehending the thick peaks and ridges. Reduce the consumption of Dao Qi and increase the casting speed when using Dimi Dao technique. Even though the ghostly transformation made his mentality unstable, Gao Hao almost punched and jumped up. Before level 10, Dao Zhong can only cultivate 2 divine powers. Innate powers are not included, which means that the grid is limited and the choices are limited. Usually, in order to maximize the advantages of the Taoist species, it is necessary to match their divine abilities based on their profession and power, such as going to a secret dojo to choose their own divine abilities. But in the early stage, there is no energy to search for a secret dojo, let alone even if you find it, you want to snatch the secret script with just a few white bone soldiers. It's too simple to think. Earth, fire and feng shui are the foundation of Taoist and supernatural powers, especially for corpses and ghosts. The way of earth is simply tailored and perfectly matched. The slow-moving quagmire that controls the overall situation, the soul-summoning prison gate that resurrects ghostly beings, and the earthly protection that resists divine powers are the most beloved Taoist techniques of the ghostly forces. Of course, currently there is only one rudimentary tomb mound on Luanchigang, which is still some distance away from the construction of the Taoist Academy. However, being able to lock in the land path in advance is a significant advantage. After the joy, Gao Hao locked his gaze once again on the broken pieces of the crazy slaughter corpse. It doesn't seem like a unit controlled by a Taoist seed, otherwise the opponent's surrounding attributes would have increased. After all, it's really rare for someone like him to have an initial counterattack attribute of 0 attacks and 0 defenses. Since there is no bonus, you can exclude one of the worst scenarios, as the person who started the game has not yet been promoted to a level. However, being able to manipulate the attack of Daohua Crazy Slaughter and arrange it in the convoy is likely a quasi-Daoist species infected with magic blood, with some potential reserves. In the environment where the 3 demons are taking blood, there is a stepping stone for the future that can no longer resist loneliness and is about to move. The more difficult thing is that Li Bin is unaware of his life and death. He still has to rely on him to trade pyroxene, and he doesn't want to sacrifice this future shining general just like this. Gao Hao took a few steps, picked up the coarse cloth covering the wooden cart, and placed several carts of pyroxene on top of it. The other party was willing to sacrifice their lives, and precious resources were transported to the mountain hill intact. He looked into the distance and detected his divine soul, but did not find any guy with ulterior motives. He was a bit cautious when approaching the right path. From this perspective, it is highly likely that Li Bin has been kidnapped and even his recruited subordinates have been killed, or even turned into a crazy butcher. This result is not surprising. After all, the fox feigns its power for a week, and he and the white-boned soldier are constrained by their appearance and cannot directly appear, and the trading volume of Huishilingmu is so large. A small fallen member of a gang who was chased the day before and immediately changed his face. Those shrewd merchants must not believe it and want to test it out. Perhaps the most suspicious businessman is the one surnamed Mu who directly deals. Is the demon blood cub hiding in the market? Gao Hao paced and then remembered that Li Bin was not entirely trustworthy. Their transaction was based on curses and hatred, but in reality, there was no such thing as a curse. If they were to be broken by a demon blood believer who could sense the magic, Li Bin might not have surrendered. After all, there is no connection between the ghostly Taoist race and the power of the ghost city and the righteous teacher. While the madness of the demonic cult is terrifying, the ghost spirit breaks the boundary between life and death. It is hard to say who is more heretical. Silent Forest, a group of lifeless bones stood still, seemingly unaware of why their master was swaying around. Gao Hao suddenly stopped and looked at the huge chunks of meat pressed down on the ground by a group of white-boned soldiers. The butcher's knife seemed to be embedded in his palm, and the fresh and smooth flesh lay on the ground like mud. The moment of life and death, which was supposed to be a serious and crisis, suddenly sparked some imaginative thoughts in Gao Hao's mind. Crazy Butcher is a microcosm of demonic believers, crazy and arrogant, willing to resort to any means to achieve their goals, often doing the most extreme things and being extremely stubborn. They enjoy slaughtering animals and tasting flesh and blood. But what people are most interested in about it is actually the comments from Crazy Butcher. Isn't it that these guys all like to eat tender meat? After all, what they eat and what they grow, perhaps they have extremely high requirements for meat quality. Previously, faced with cold data, even with exquisite animations, it was impossible to get a glimpse, but now it can be verified. Touching the withered palm against the wriggling red flesh, it is rosy, tender, delicate and smooth, without dullness, even slightly warm, forming a sharp contrast with the terrifying appearance. Compared in this way, the skin and flesh of the corpse ghost Dao Zhong are like dirty crumpled rags. It seems that everyone's guess is good. Demon believers are all cravers of flesh and blood Taoism, with extremely high demands in this area, even to the point of paranoia. No wonder the military unit, the Huan Desire Mother, has extremely strong seductive ability. The Huan Dao seed can easily bewitch people. Thinking about their stunning beauty, graceful figures, coupled with their fragrant and gentle softness, who wouldn't be a normal person? Thinking of this, Gao Hao suddenly burst out laughing, as if it was inappropriate to think of something strange at the moment of life and death. However, his previous hesitation was dispelled. This is already a stalemate crisis situation, so the insurance must be implemented, otherwise we can only sit idly by. What if the other party is unparalleled in the world and the three demons are famous? When Gao Hao bullied Xianchao Xingjuan, the demon cub had not yet been born. Press it down. Waving his hand, he commanded the white-boned soldiers who couldn't understand and pressed the crazy butcher into the forest. With eagle-like eyes, looking towards the end of the mountain. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Arrival. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Arrival. Amidst the towering peaks and quiet grasslands, the sound of rustling can be heard. A group of black shadows slowly approached the chaotic stone hill under the cover of dark clouds at night. About 20 men, half of whom were armed, held sharp swords made of spiritual wood and walked cautiously without making any sound, indicating that they were well trained on a regular basis. However, the disharmonious low growls shattered the atmosphere, with some large, muscular figures wearing rags impatiently pounding their chests, revealing bright red flesh and blood. In the center of the clearly defined team, there is a middle-aged man wearing a bamboo hat, with a pair of red eyes scanning the distance. Mu Zhen was originally a well-known merchant in the original village market, but he was blessed a week ago on the night of magic blood. At that time, he thought he was going to die, his blood burning all over, and his flesh constantly contorted and transformed, like a balloon being casually kneaded. However, in the end, he managed to survive and awaken an unprecedented inheritance within the divine soul, knowing the key to the promotion of the demon blood cult to a higher level of cultivation, as well as the necessary items for the construction of the power barracks. What he awakened was the demon quasi-Dao seed, who needed to collect scattered demon blood in order to be promoted to Dao seed. Even so, he has mastered a certain level of magic blood divine power. Blood thief. Able to spy on the opponent's blood flow, control their strength, and launch theft to steal their blood and gas. At first, he was not very familiar with this supernatural ability, until one day, in anger, he sucked his subordinate's blood dry with his bare hands and converged into his own body, feeling as comfortable as ascending to immortality. From then on, he became addicted to stealing blood. A significant part of the current disaster in Yuansuan is the tragedy caused by his inability to resist stealing blood. As the blood theft progressed, Mu Zhen discovered that he gradually awakened a special ability that could influence those crazy flesh and blood lunatics and indirectly control them, known as the First Order Unit of the Mad Slayer. But so far, no matter how much he stole the blood of civilians, he could not gain promotion, and Mu Zhen understood that he had reached the bottleneck. The inheritance flowing in his blood told him that in order to cross the pass, he must collect true magic blood, find those favored ones bestowed by the blood moon, tear open his chest, dig out his heart, and drain their blood in order to achieve perfection. He did not leave the original village because of his magical blood induction. The prey had already gathered here, and the other party's thoughts were completely identical to his. Last week at the market, a gang member named Li Bin suddenly appeared and exchanged a large amount of pyroxene. In such a chaotic world, spirit wood is a more crucial resource than pyroxene, and the exchange ratio shows what everyone needs. Li Bin, however, disregarded it. Although he was cautious, the trading of spiritual wood continued to flow. What if the seemingly unreasonable approach is aimed at hoarding resources and preparing for construction? Although Xuandao Zhong is unable to directly build slaughterhouses, the inheritance knowledge of the early faction is gradually being acquired, and the only thing he lacks is the accumulation of magic blood to complete that final step. With his influence and accumulation in the original village, as soon as the slaughterhouse is built, the council hall and various pre-built buildings are transformed into crazy slaughterhouses, and the town is washed with blood. Even if the 9 Wasteland City Immortal Court were to come, he would not be afraid. Thinking of this, he stomped his feet heavily, and there was a sudden silence around him. The despicable demon blood thief, who was born from the same root, why not actively integrate into his body and reach the peak of flesh and blood together? And also harbor a wicked heart. After a week of trading with Li Bin, there was no movement from the people behind the scenes, and Mu Zhen knew he couldn't wait any longer. He certainly believed that the enemy was also a potential candidate without promotion, but the other party always accumulated pyroxene, so they could not easily achieve it. After the team left the village, he attacked the convoy and had Crazy 2 infiltrate the team, disguised himself in the clothes of the deceased, and returned to Wanshur gang for testing. There is indeed a problem. 3 crazy slaughters, even if surrounded by more than 10 ordinary people, cannot be restrained at all. Unexpectedly, there was no movement upon entering the chaotic stone hill. Although it has long been speculated that obtaining a large amount of spiritual wood is definitely not ordinary, now Mu Zhen is more certain of the other person's identity, and it must be a quasi-Taoist like him. The best strategy when facing evenly matched opponents is to lure them into a trap, surround them, and kill them. I don't know why the other party didn't come forward directly. They need Li Bin to act on their behalf for the acquisition. Perhaps it's a bait thrown, but they also need to break this extended claw. 3 days passed without any response. Not much different from what he imagined, Li Bin was just an ordinary person. Perhaps a bit clever and intelligent, he was a small pawn that could be abandoned at will. Even if missing or dying, it will not affect the decision of those behind the scenes. And most importantly, even though it was such an insignificant chess piece, he didn't catch it and was actually taken away by Li Bin, which was really frustrating. Coincidentally, a slick and clever guy walked among the guards. The captain of the guards, Wang Yu, bent down and a strange fragrance wafted in. "Sir, this place is gloomy and indescribable. Many people in the village went missing up the mountain before, and even the young master of the Wang family has not been heard of. Let's calm down and investigate the clues, give our subordinate some time, and we will definitely be able to catch that Li Bin." Seeing Mu Zhen bowing her head in contemplation and her body trembling slightly, Wang Yu thought these words had an effect and continued to advise. "It's not really the fault of the young people. They were supposed to keep a close eye on Li Bin in the village, but to their surprise, he disappeared while using the restroom around Qingfeng building. Li Daitao was stiff, and someone was willing to take such a risk for him." There was a moment of silence, followed by a soft bass. "Qing Feng Lu." Upon hearing Mu Zhen muttering, Wang Yu's face was slightly pleased and he hurriedly added, "Recently, the Gulan place has been very popular. It seems that several top players have come from it, which is unparalleled in beauty, so many people have mixed eyes. But I'm sure my subordinate, Li Bin must have some connection with him. It's better for us to break into the building and search carefully." Speaking of this, it seems that Wang Yu's face turned slightly red as he thought of the beautiful women's red robes and gentle like water. Coincidentally, the red moon emerged from the dark clouds and suddenly draped a layer of red veil, as if a surge of blood was surging. "Ah! Ah!" Startled first, then powerless, until silent. The kingfish, who was not short in stature, had already been sucked into half of its blood, and its body was separated by a sharp blade, throwing it to the gradually insane slaughter. The feast of biting and devouring continued, and the guards on the side remained silent as if they were cicadas, but dared not flee, afraid of becoming targets. Mu Zhen turned around with a gloomy face that revealed a strange satisfaction. His blood-red eyes stared at the living people fiercely and said, "Kill the Wanshur gang, capture the people behind the scenes, and become a person who rewards 1,000 spirit jade. If he wants to run, he will come to an end." Watching the kingfish being divided and eaten, everyone hurriedly agreed, clapping their chests and promising, wishing to kneel down and kowtow. However, loyalty and morale were questionable. Mu Zhen naturally doesn't care about the life or death of these cannon fodder. Let them charge up and consume a wave of enemies, even if they slow down their crazy slaughter, he will have a chance to take action. Under the reflection of the red moon, the disorderly rocky forest also became gloomy. Even from a distance, it seemed that one could hear the sound of trees falling and rusty knives cutting down. He came here on an adventure to personally scout the opponent's condition. Even though the magic blood attracted each other, distance was the greatest constraint. Now the red moon is stimulating, and a crazy butcher is going crazy in the forest. It indicates that the other party may have some strength to defeat two crazy butchers, but still suffer some damage. The most important thing is that he realized that the blood of the mad slayer was not contaminated, and the purity of the enemy's magic blood was not strong. With celestial phenomena and unparalleled supernatural powers, it is also a crucial magic blood technique that has long been planted. I have the advantage in this battle, and I will definitely gain magic blood and complete the promotion. The guards were driven forward, and the crazy butcher raised his butcher's knife, while the demon bandits waited for the opportunity to move. The entire silent land was boiling with demonic blood. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Clash. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Clash. From arrogance to deception, from madness to indulgence. Just like their obsession with flesh and blood, the deadly and excellent qualities of demonic believers. Under the red moon sky, all the attack power and health points of the demon cult's mad slayer increased by 1, which indeed had a significant impact on the early First Order soldiers. Gao Hao glanced at the crazy slaughter in the forest, as if it had been run over by an elephant, causing chaos to the extreme. On the other hand, slaughtering blood everywhere and watering the soil to make it more vibrant. As a ghostly Taoist, he really can't control the crazy slaughter. Unless in the middle and later stages, obtaining the treasure blood demon order and building the demon cult barracks can prevent them from being weakened by racial mixing. Gao Hao was not prepared to control the crazy slaughter. He kept this last one and waited for today's blood night to lure you into the jar. The divine soul reaching up to 2 points allowed Gao Hao to detect the incoming enemy early on. 6 crazy slaughters, 20 guardians, and 1 demon quasi-Dao seed pose a significant threat. After all, it was the era of demonic blood thieves, and even if it was not possible to directly build a quasi-Dao type of first-level barracks, it could still affect the use of mad slaughter. If placed in the beginning of the Terror Resurrection, Gao Hao would take a walk on the Wanshur Hill, and several white-boned soldiers would admire him. Joining his team would be the limitation of the times. However, this situation had already occurred to him at the beginning of his awakening, and he naturally wouldn't complain about the unfairness of heaven towards me. In fact, the enemy's control of 6 crazy slaughterhouses is already the limit. After all, they are only quasi-skilled soldiers and not soldiers produced by their own slaughterhouses. No matter how many they have, they will lose control. Therefore, using 3 crazy slaughters to consume the living power first, and then exerting full force to suppress it, is considered the best strategy. Unfortunately, the other party never expected that they would face a completely physical and built tomb-mound corpse ghost race. In fact, with the trading of Lingmu, the chances of winning by deploying troops in another week will be even greater. But still, for that reason, this is the era of demonic blood thieves. If he cannot use the intelligence and knowledge he possesses to establish an advantage, he will soon be suppressed. The Ghost Palace is a crucial link, with it there is an economic source, and there will be no such bad situation as income being cut off now. Moreover, this place is a place where 3 demons compete for blood ties. If any demon cub succeeds in sneaking an attack without emphasizing their martial arts skills and purifying their demon blood, the difficulty of confrontation will increase dramatically. White Bone Soldier. Attack 4, 7, Defense 5, Killing 1.3, Health 6, Speed 4, with Soul Control and Tao Seed bonuses, the attack power of the White Bone Soldier has reached a small peak of 7. Even if the Blood Moon bonus is added to the Crazy Slaughter, it is not enough to be seen in front of the White Bone army. A thunderous sound came from the earth, and the vanguard of 20 guards had already rushed up the mountain slope, hesitating for a moment before still stepping into the forest. The quiet and gloomy forest was not as terrifying as imagined, with shattered bones scattered on the damp soil, like the forgotten ones of the past. Keep moving forward, kill anyone you see. Faced with an enemy suspected to be a demon blood quasi-Taoist, Mu Zhen naturally wouldn't show mercy. He commanded a crazy butcher to lead the way, directly crushing the forest and heading forward. This place is not far from the perceived uncontrollable slaughter, and one can even smell the sweet smell of blood in the air. Mu Zhen's heart was slightly puzzled as to why the soil was so moist despite not having rained in the past few days. Even as he reached this point, he still did not realize that he belonged to the special induction of the demon blood path. Has it been that the other party has already fled? Impatience and unease coexist, and the madness becomes increasingly irritable. As the troops charged forward, the guards fell into a shallow quagmire and slowed down their movements. Suddenly, bone swords, bone spurs, and even sharp white bone claws emerged from the ground, dragging the guards who arrived here underground. Ah! The screams of agony echoed one after another, and in the blink of an eye, more than half of the guards were injured. Even those who reacted quickly could not avoid being struck with sharp swords, almost losing their combat effectiveness. The Yin wind blows, revealing the mottled red moon in the dark forest. Countless skeletons and skeletons protrude from the soil, absorbing the vitality of living beings and appearing in the wreckage. They have empty eyes, no emotions or souls, only extreme coldness and evil. Ghosts. The guards were originally capable of a battle, but when they were ambushed, they were immediately frightened and fled in all directions. However, what greeted them was a rusty iron knife, like chopping melons and vegetables. Mu Zhen's cold words came. They're just some bones, anyone who dares to escape will die immediately. Indeed, after the initial panic, the guards equipped with spiritwood weapons fought against the white bone soldiers and found that the opponent was not unstoppable, some even had average killing power. On the contrary, in the initial panic, the other party seized the opportunity to kill half of the people. There were 6 or 7 remaining guards who could still move, facing off against 3 white bone soldiers within the encirclement, guarding cautiously and without incident for a while. The real battlefield still depends on the confrontation between Crazy Butcher and White Bone soldiers. Crazy Butcher with blood-red eyes has already rushed towards him, and the target is naturally Gao Hao, who has already appeared on the battlefield. At this moment, Gao Hao is still dressed in a black robe, standing calmly at the back of the team. In stark contrast to him was Mu Zhen, whose face was full of disbelief. Gao Hao could almost think of the other party's confusion. Where did the strange white bone soldiers come from? How come the guy in front of me has no scent of demonic blood? Doubts are right. If the other party has enough information to control, how can we fight? The battlefield was constantly changing, and Mu Zhen had no time to think. The first-level troops of both sides faced each other head-on. The white bone soldier has a movement speed of up to 4, allowing it to take the lead. Still using the method of siege, riding on the opponent's attack, up to 3 fully wounded white bone soldiers attacked Crazy Slaughter, and in an instant, blood and flesh splattered. Even if the opponent reached a thick life of 7, they could not withstand this blow and immediately split into pieces. The rest of the crazy butchers were mostly attacked first and then counterattacked. At this moment, Mu Zhen's face had turned pale, completely different from what he had imagined. These white-boned soldiers were quick to move and had extraordinary resistance to beating. Despite being hit by the crazy butcher and suddenly losing arms and legs, he was still able to stand up. The most terrifying thing is the opponent's attack power. Why is it so abnormal? With a sword from the white bone, the mad slayer splattered flesh and blood visible to the naked eye. Mu Zhen's scalp tingled, and he finally focused his gaze on Gao Hao, who was hiding behind the scenes. He himself rushed forward with the impact of the mad slayer, trying to subdue the mastermind behind the scenes. Undoubtedly one of the three demons, there is a possibility of promotion to a Taoist level, and one is very keen on judging the battlefield situation. As a ghostly Taoist, Gao Hao has a natural talent and skill of soul control, which gives him an advantage in control, but his body is relatively weak. Crazy slaughter splattered blood and flesh, and the bones of the white-boned soldiers separated, creating a chaotic scene. Mu Zhen acted very quickly, and after approaching, he finally sensed a faint flow of qi and blood. Without hesitation, he immediately launched the blood thief. Affected by divine spirits, the range of blood theft has been greatly reduced. Unknown species. Attack 1, Defense 0, Divine Soul 2, Dao Method 0, Daozhong. How could it be possible? Mu Zhen's surprise almost overflowed, and a fear originating from his heart overwhelmed him. He never expected that in the small chaotic grave, there was actually a formed Dao seed hidden. White-boned soldiers, hidden in the soil, divine souls and supernatural powers, everything has an explanation. Under the power of stealing blood, Gao Hao's already rough skin and flesh suddenly cracked and crazily oozed blood, making him look like a torn watermelon. The piercing pain made him tremble all over, but he still maintained his figure. A dark ghost appeared in his right arm, and a sinister ghost suddenly pounced out. Mu Zhen maintains the power of stealing blood, which consumes equally much. Her 7 orifices bleed, and the world in her eyes almost turns red with blood. His physical strength is weak. Just hold on a little longer, as long as you kill him, these bones will lose control. 3 more breaths. As if seeing the dawn of a desperate comeback, Mu Zhen's eyes turned even redder, staring only at Gao Hao with a ferocious and terrifying expression, completely insane. But at this moment, a dark figure slowly stood up from behind Mu Zhen, lifted the spirit-wood sword, and fiercely chopped it down. Soul awakening +1, corpse ghost +1, stubborn and confronted, waiting for this moment. Mu really wants to capture thieves and kings, but Gao Hao doesn't want to compete with him to consume. All the struggles came to an abrupt end. Pushi. Angry ox-like blood eyes, spinning in the air for an unknown number of times, hit the wet and difficult to walk muddy ground, rolling towards the distance with their bones rolling. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Determination to defend the land. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Determination to defend the land. After being defeated like a mountain, losing control of the correct path, the battlefield quickly calmed down. The remaining crazy slaughters were slaughtered one by one, leaving no survivors. Mu Zhen is just a quasi-Dao type, without any bonus to the attributes of the troops, just barely manipulating it. Now that he has died, Crazy 2 has completely fallen into madness, but is helpless to be surrounded and killed by a large army of skeletons. 6 were killed in a frenzy, 15 guards died, 5 bones were silenced, and the remaining subordinates were also lightly injured, which can be described as brutal. In fact, in terms of the number of subordinates alone, Mu Zhen has an absolute advantage, but the white-boned soldiers are too powerful. After various bonuses, and coupled with terrain traps, Gao Hao barely won the battle. If Mu Zhen absorbs another dose of magic blood, or can control a few more crazy slaughters, and even the guards are more cautious, the outcome may be greatly reversed. However, if there is no such thing as death, it can definitely be called a brilliant victory. Gao Hao dragged his body covered in blood towards the headless corpse, cut open his tattered robe with a sword, and took out his belongings with him. Pyroxene +2, Spirit Jade +8,000, Suspected Unknown Magic Blood Treasure +1, in Gao Hao's hand, there was an ancient piece of cloth with blood outlining a eerie image. It had some human features, but also resembled pig, snake, and pigeon figures, which were both eerie and terrifying. When he held it, he felt his qi and blood restless, and his inner desires surging. He also did not know this item and did not use it when Meng Xuanji appeared. However, experience quickly led Gao Hao to determine that its purpose was to sense the fluctuations of nearby magic blood, making it a treasure hunting tool that had a great impact on demonic followers. The biggest gain is naturally magic blood, but unfortunately it has no use for him as a ghostly Taoist. The corpse of Mu Zhen ignited without wind, and the fiery red flames treated its flesh and blood like firewood. It burned fiercely, emitting a pungent and unpleasant odor. In the midst of a bright light, it seemed as if the mournful cries of those who died unjustly could be heard from the depths of the blood river. There is a story passed down about the invincibility of immortals, in which the disciples of the demonic cult were harmed by the three poisons and used their bodies to melt away all evil thoughts in the world. They are both destroyed and reborn. After death, the infinite blood river will also incorporate its insane spirit, suffer from torment, and repay causality. Of course, the fate of the ghostly Dao Zhong is not much better. Since it breaks the sleep of the deceased, Dao Zhong cannot escape the fate of being manipulated. Unlike the world that promotes truth, goodness, and beauty, in the invincibility of immortals, the immortal dynasty and the holy martial palace are equally unattractive, and even hide cunning and malicious intent behind the glorious and majestic image. Otherwise, in the first two acts, there will be a chance for the demon blood sect to cause trouble if they peacefully develop and rest. This is the chaotic world, where deceit and deceit compete for the world. How to view the development of the plot depends on what kind of camp you are in. After all, he still relied on his fists to speak, and Gao Hao had already realized this. If you want to kill me, I will kill you. If it threatens the camp, take action in advance to eliminate the threat. If you dare to touch my land, I will take your life. No one can stop the development of Ghost City forces. One of the three demons, who has the hope of being promoted to the demon Ko Dao Zhong, is just an arrogant and crazy brat in front of the white-boned soldier. Even when facing the famous Meng Xuanji, his attitude will not change. Watching the burning of blood and fire continue, dispelling the darkness around me, I cannot help but marvel at the powerful power of demonic blood. If absorbed and digested by demonic believers, their abilities will be difficult to suppress. However, this ultimately addresses the symptoms rather than the root cause. In the scene of the demon blood thief, even if you kill many demon cultists, it will not affect the rise of the demon blood Dao seed like mushrooms after rain, because the heaven and earth Dao Qi are almost always serving it. It can only be said that in the area of the original village, the other demon blood types are not easily promoted directly. After Mu Zhen's death, their qi will recover in a short period of time, and the other two demons may develop faster, barely delaying some time. This place, this stage, but time is the most precious. Gao Hao left several guards with their lives on the battlefield and cursed them as if they had gone back to their original village to retrieve the belongings left by Mu Zhen, with the main target being Pyroxene. After all, Mu Zhen's attack was also sudden, and no one knew his purpose at all. These guards can return to retrieve Pyroxene, or they can cover it up by trading a few days ago without any further suspicion. Pyroxene. Gao Hao's true goal is still here. After all, killing a demon follower does not bring him much direct benefit. However, Mu Zhen cut off the transaction, kidnapped the agent, and the construction of the ghost palace was on the verge of death. After some questioning, Gao Hao learned that Li Bin had escaped, which was quite unexpected. Faced with the encirclement of Mu Zhen and the sense of the blood thief, he unexpectedly did not catch an ordinary person. No wonder he arranged for 3 crazy butchers to test it. Before, Gao Hao whispered to Li Bin, asking him to bring the enemy to Luanchigang without any hesitation when things were impossible. After all, facing an enemy of extraordinary power, no matter how much potential Li Bin has, he is still not qualified now. Amidst his contemplation, a strange fragrance emanated from the pile of blood and fire, like a woman's powder scent, very faint and almost imperceptible. If it weren't for his high spirit of 2, it would have been hard to detect. Gao Hao frowned and instructed the departing guard, "Your main tasks are pyroxene and spirit wood. Don't worry about other items. If there is any unexpected situation, don't dwell on it, don't ask too many questions, send back the resources, and I will spare your life. If you don't see the resources, death is easy." The remaining few people were already injured, looked at each other, and finally turned their gaze to the white-boned soldier, shivering uncontrollably. People are so strange, sometimes they can sacrifice their lives and forget death, not caring about what is happening behind them for their beliefs or impulses. However, if even death is manipulated, it is indeed too scary. Everyone nodded and pushed the wooden cart back to the original village, as if there were some ghosts supervising. The battlefield is once again calm, but flesh and bones remind people of how fierce the fierce battle just now was. Gao Hao commanded the white-boned soldiers to dig up the soil and bury the bodies, covering them with blood and water, otherwise it would cause unnecessary trouble. Having the divine power of the way of the earth, one can almost have a clear view of the terrain of the chaotic stone hills. Of course, there is no monastery, and apart from talent, one cannot temporarily acquire divine powers. But the way of the earth is almost the key to determining the fate of this battle. If it weren't for the white-boned soldiers ambushing and attacking in the soft mud, the first wave would have halved the number of guards, and the outcome would be hard to say. This involves the determination rules of the 4 attribute divine powers. With Mu Jin's perception, even though he cannot detect the blood flow of the white-boned soldier, the hidden crisis underground can still be traced. Why didn't he notice? There is no hidden divine power in the way of the lower earth, but if it is low, it is completely crushing. Mu Jin has no ability to judge the anomalies underground. White-boned soldiers under the command of Gao Hao will also receive protection from the earth's veins. Therefore, the way of the earth is the best way to cultivate the path of the dead and ghosts, and it is definitely not a boast. Its practicality on the battlefield is too great. Fundamentally, this battle is still too risky, with both sides evenly matched and requiring every possible skill to narrowly win. Besides, there are external enemies lurking around and secretly spying. The situation has indeed reached its most dangerous moment, and we have to declare victory in one battle and demonstrate our strength. After handling the battlefield briefly, Gao Hao instructed the white-boned soldiers to continue logging. Even if the trade was interrupted for 3 days, he was not idle. Now that Lingmu is 16, waiting for the guards to return to retrieve the stones, the resources required for the ghost hall will be sufficient. Exhausted physical strength, weak spirit, and insufficient military strength, everything is unfavorable to him. However, Gao Hao remained unmoved and continued to work, unwavering in his previous plan. Whoever dares to come to Kaoshigang must be prepared for death. Under the blood moon, the gloomy ghost hill returns to a terrifying silence. End of this chapter. 10. Chapter 10 Ghost Temple. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10 Ghost Temple. The stone path spreads along the edge of the original village, with a resting place composed of dilapidated wooden houses and remnants of old earth walls on one side. Beside it is a classical tall building paved with blue stones, magnificent golden glazed tiles, and meticulously crafted carvings. The two are clearly distinct. It's hard to imagine a small village with such extravagant buildings, but if it's a gentle village, it's not difficult to understand. The singing and dancing were peaceful, and the lights were brightly lit. Throughout the night, the elegant music of Qinfeng Tower continued, which was quite disturbing to the people. At the railing of the third-floor attic, a young man dressed in gray stood still, gazing quietly at the distant night sky in the mountains. Amidst the hustle and bustle, a lotus step moved and a clear and sweet voice came. "Is that person from Luanshigang really so powerful?" You have been blessed by me, and this time you have shed your golden shell. If you trust me, why put you in such a position? Why don't you express your concerns and I'll take care of them for you? Li Bin turned around and faced a girl wearing a scarf. Unlike the women in the building who were dressed in bright and angry red robes, she was dressed in a deep linen robe that was wide and thick, with a very large collar that tightly wrapped her skin. However, relying solely on the white goose neck, it constantly made people wonder what it would look like under the rough cloth, wanting to explore what was hidden in the bulging and simple linen clothes. Just a small piece of skin is so radiant and beautiful, how can more skin be an unimaginable scenery? If it weren't for her appearance on the top floor of Qingfeng Tower, no one would have associated it with this place of fireworks. Her beautiful eyes were supposed to be beautiful and charming, but they always made people feel deeply sad, lovable, and filled with inexplicable charm. Li Bin, however, dared not look up directly and bowed, saying, "The handkerchief that was handed to me by Miss Qin last time, including this one, was informed to me in advance. I will always remember it in my heart. If there is something useful, it will definitely be overwhelming. However, the situation at Luanchigang cannot be described. It is said that one will die." The girl was lost in thought, her beautiful eyes lost in thought, and she said, "Do you think Qingfeng Tower cannot resist that? Is it because the women's delicate postures make you suspicious?" Li Bin shook his head and replied, "That's not the case. The bloody puppets slaughtering wildly on the streets, the cave beasts harassing through the woods, and the eerie shadows hidden in the shadows, and even I have experienced it firsthand. If there is a choice, I would rather be a pioneer for you, but I cannot do it temporarily." The girl nodded and took out a wooden box, which was the material Li Bin used to exchange for Lingyu. She caressed the dead shadow, her hands slippery, and her pink blood eroded upwards. For a moment, the two fell into silence, leaving only the pleasant silk and bamboo downstairs, with laughter and joy. Mu Zhen's subordinates have returned and are moving pyroxene towards the Chaoshi Hill. They are not too distracted, their goals are clear, only resources. Compared to spirit wood, pyroxene seems to be more important. The girls seemed to casually reveal it, but it shocked Li Bin. He naturally knew why Mu Zhen was taking people to Luanchigang, and also understood the strength of the troops he was carrying. 3 days have passed, and I can't believe that the winner has already been decided tonight. Although Mu Zhen is very strict about resources, he does not refuse visitors. The only person who truly needs pyroxene is that adult. The girl smiled sweetly, with a charming demeanor like a blooming flower in spring, but full of dangerous thorns. How about I take someone to Luanchigang now to reap the benefits of fishing? Even if that person has strong strength, they cannot withstand the attacks of the two quasi-Taoists. I will do my best for you, this guy. Li Bin, however, remained unmoved. He understood that the other party could not have started a fight over an insignificant ordinary person. Even if he performs well, he is just an admirer for the time being, and as long as he steps onto the Luanchigang, it is a never-ending situation, because so far no provocative person can safely return from above, not even wild monsters. After a moment of silence, he said, "You have your own judgment. I believe you have already explored the situation before, and the whereabouts of Mu Zhen's subordinates cannot escape your scrutiny. It goes without saying when is the best time. As a prisoner and recipient, I can only say one word. The adult from Luanchigang told me, if something cannot be done, then lead the enemy back to the mountain." The atmosphere suddenly froze like ice. Although the girl's expression remained unchanged in front of him, Li Bin felt suffocated and his body trembled involuntarily. His blood was as uncomfortable as being frozen by ice. After careful consideration, I will never forget. The rivers, mountains, lakes, and seas, why should beautiful women cry? A slightly melancholic song came from downstairs, mixed with grievances in the vast expanse, making everything difficult to achieve. Who? Gently exhale, the mysterious ice situation instantly resolves. When two tigers compete, there will always be one injury. It's a waste of money to benefit those in the dark. We all need time, but time is fair to everyone. At least for now, we are not enemies. Upon hearing these words, Li Bin couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief in his heart. It seemed that the girl was not prepared to take the opportunity to attack. Qingfeng Tower is very powerful, and within a few days, Li Bin had already gained some insight. Even the terrifying and bloodthirsty crazy butcher was quiet here like a cook. Of course, he would not naively believe that the other party had spared the Luangshigang because of their kindness. The so-called time is ultimately due to a lack of strength, still waiting for key things. The girl has the ability to perceive blood pulsations and even use pink mist to influence her mind. Mu Zhen's actions were perceived in advance, not only because of the overwhelming news, but also because of the complete victory in the Taoist confrontation. She cannot perceive the state of the adult at Luangshigang. The so-called profit and loss of magic blood. Li Bin felt that there was more to it than that. It must have been a big incident at Luangshigang tonight, which made her, who had always been in control, unable to grasp it and dare not take risks easily. The girl moved slightly and looked towards the rudimentary street. At the end was a group of laborers transporting wood and stones, who were the laborers from the neighboring impoverished residents. Even if there was work in the middle of the night, they immediately got up, regardless of their destination. As long as you have money and can make a living, it doesn't matter if you have a bad life. And she finally had a balance. By the way, my name is Meng Xuanji. You can call me Meng Ji or Xian Ji. Lanterns hanging high, with a charming smile, starting from the original village. Yes, Lord Dream. The demonic blood burned out, but the remaining bright red had already been smeared on the deep earth. No one can imagine why such precious magic blood was wasted without any utilization. The desire for blood in the demon blood race is engraved in the bone marrow, and even through mountains and seas, they can detect the dissipation of gifts. This is such a proud person who disdains to merge the blood of others. Unfortunately, a corpse ghost cultivator really doesn't need it. Gao Hao watched quietly as the laborer carried the wood and stones, hidden in the shadows and motionless. At this point, he no longer thought about any crisis or who was about to strike, and his inner peace was unprecedented. Mu Zhen's reserves were partially confiscated, and the guards were unable to obtain all of them. Despite hearing Gao Hao's warning, they did not entangle too much and only transported resources. Lingmu plus 5, Pyroxene plus 10, Lingyu plus 3000. Total resources. Lingmu 21, Pyroxene 22, Lingyu 13,000. The resources of the Ghost Hall are already complete. Not far from the tomb mound, smoke and dust rise everywhere. A magnificent building surrounded by wood and stone slowly rises, with dark blue bricks, towering wooden stakes, and eerie ghost patterns intertwined around it. The dim yellow lights sway in the hall, as if there is a terrifying revival inside. The construction of the Ghost Hall has been completed. A supernatural hall built in the land of corpse and bones, where 1000 spirit jade can be obtained daily through corpse bone conversion. Evaluation. The eerie underworld hall, rumored to have the dead discussing in it every midnight. Oh, don't say it was me who spread it, because everyone who heard it has already died. The dark shadow grew longer and longer under the lights, and Gao Hao officially stepped into the Ghost Hall. End of this chapter.